Hello there.
Hi, is this Margaret?
It certainly is.
All right, well, let me do the official introductions. Ladies and gentlemen, we're very excited to welcome our first guest for this evening. We've been talking about her for the past hour. She is an actress, a dancer, a voiceover artist, an author, a motivational speaker, and the reference model for Walt Disney's Tinker Bell. We're very excited to welcome Margaret Kerry to the show. You're on the air live with Terry and Tiffany. Welcome.
What a lovely introduction. I wish I would have recorded that. It makes me tired to think about it, but thank you. I'm so happy to be with you. I love radio. I had my own radio show for 10.5 years out of Salem Communications, and there's just nothing like it, is there?
There's not.
Absolutely. You know, I'm tempted to call you Peggy, but if Eddie Cantor wants me to call you Margaret, that's good enough for me.
Well, his name was Itzhak Kowitzkowitz or something like that. And if he knew enough to change his name, I figured he knew enough to change my name.
Wow. The thing Definitely. The thing I want to find out is it's amazing you have done so much and started way back in the early days of Hollywood. And is it true you just came back from doing a county fair?
Yes. In fact, I drove home hoping that there wasn't any traffic, and there wasn't. And I had time for a cup of coffee, and we just had a wonderful time. There is a building at the Los Angeles County Fair, Building 6, that is called Pixels and Pixar's, I think it is. And it's all about animation, and the children can do all kinds of fun things with artwork and then information. It was just delightful. So I was called by Troy Carlson, who owns, he and his family own Stage 9 up in Old Sacramento, and said, "You want to come?" And I said, "Do I ever?" Had a wonderful time.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, you know, I've got to admit something to you. When I was a kid, I had a major crush on Tinkerbell, and I guess all this time I was in love with you.
Well, but you see, as you matured, you understood it was me, so you're in love with me now?
Definitely. Definitely.
Okay, I'm not doing anything Tuesday. You want to get married? Why are you laughing?
So let me ask...
Wait, you just got proposed to by Tinkerbell.
What I want to know, Margaret, is if we get married, can I get into Disneyland for free?
Do you know that I don't go there very much?
Really?
I am in the most lovely position. I live in Glendale, California. And to my west is Disney Studios. And to my east is the new campus for Imagineering. Not new, but they have done it over and it's gorgeous. So I get calls and I go have coffee there, and I just never really get down to Disneyland. It's terrible. Somebody, why don't you invite me?
You know, I would love to take you, and I think it's still there. I hope it's still there. I want to take you on the Peter Pan ride.
It's
because
still there.
It's still there. And then
it's still there. It's still there. You know about why there's a Peter Pan ride there and why there is a Pinocchio ride there. It was so important to start with, and you probably do know the story about that Tinkerbell was going to be long forgotten. Did you knew that, right?
No.
No, go ahead and tell the story. There's more. Some more.
Okay. Well, the story is that Walt Disney never did a sequel, and the reason being is that he had worked on the movie, whatever he was working on, for 8, 9, 10 years, and he had other things to do. So the other things to do in this situation after 1953, when Peter Pan did very well, thank you, and got high reviews and high praise. But that was it. That was great. But he was working on a thing called a theme park. And most people at the studio, including Walt Disney's wife, knew that it wasn't going to go anywhere, particularly when it said it was going to be in a place called Anaheim. I mean, come on, where's that? So the powers that be at the studio asked Roy to talk to Walt Disney and say, they're asking you on this theme park to not use any of our major characters at the theme park. No Mickey, Minnie, no Goofy, no et cetera, et cetera. You get the message.
Wow.
And he said, why? And they said, well, because if it goes belly up, and it's very liable to, that these characters, they may be really hurt as far as licensing them because they were part of a fiasco. Now, I'm sure I'm using harsher words than they did, but we want to protect these characters. Well, as I've been told by people who were there at the time, said Walt Disney understood immediately the business, but he was going to be calling it, according to Neil Gabler's book, he was going to be calling it Mickey's Village.
Wow.
And suddenly, he's at Mickey's Village with no Mickey.
Right.
I mean, how do you like that one? So anyway, he said, let me think about it a couple of days. And a few days later, he talked to Roy, and he said, tell them I'm bringing back Tinkerbell and Jiminy Cricket. And actually, he brought me back.
Wow.
I was to be on the shelf, and that took care of that. I did the 13 Peter Pan peanut butter commercials, and that was it. And so they had to then change the way that they were going to present Disneyland. And if you were there in 1955 when it opened, you saw Tinkerbell up on every pennant, on every ticket, on every napkin, on every cup. It was only Tinkerbell and Jiminy Cricket. Well, if this is true, then don't you have to have a Peter Pan ride?
Absolutely. True.
You know,
don't you have to have a Pinocchio ride?
Yes.
For sure.
Sure you do.
You know, you're really lucky. So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so I was big stuff at that point. And then they fell short of money, as I understand it. Please forgive me. I don't have everything exactly right, but they went to ABC and said, would you like put in with us? And ABC said, yes, as long as we can have an hour of a show on Sunday from Disney Studios.
Right.
And that's when it was suggested, and I don't know by whom, but I sort of think it probably was Walt Disney, who said, let's have Tinkerbell, since she's very big at the theme park, let's have her come in to my office and take everybody on an adventure every Sunday. And that's how I became an icon.
It's fabulous.
Definitely.
You know, it was interesting, Margaret, and I didn't know this because they don't do things like this nowadays. But I had no idea the amount of time and work that went into Walt Disney's original animation films. I had no idea that they would have the reference models come in and they would build sets and they would have costumes and you would pantomime the entire film just so the animators could draw you. What was that process like?
It's amazing. It's amazing. I tell you, and they still do a lot of it today. But this was going to be so special. And they had a handle on how to do it and make it special because they had learned from each movie that they were doing. But if you really want to know how detailed it was, I was over in London. Disney sent us over, that is Catherine Beaumont and myself, over to London for a press junket. And they invited 60 different media to come and join us in London, and as an aside, they were going to fly over in a helicopter, make the great flyover of Big Ben and Parliament and so on and so forth in a helicopter, these press people, and I'll tell you why I'm telling you that in a minute. So anyway, I'm on the BBC with Catherine, and she's saying, well, I know that Wendy is just really you did so much of the work, Margaret, and so on. Oh, she's such a lady. Anyway, I said, forgive me, but let me point out to you that every night you had to go back and learn every line that you'd already recorded months before. You had to be able to lip sync that line. You had to get into costume the next day after school, and with 3 other people, 4 other people, 5 other people, who knew, and 3 of them little kids, then you had to go through this whole reference model routine and lip sync every special line exactly. And Catherine looked at me and she said, I did, didn't I? With a lovely British accent. I said, yes, do you realize with Tinkerbell, I didn't have to do that. She wasn't talking in the film. I could just go over and act out the scenes, but they had the nursery set up, and when they went flying in those ridiculous, I don't know what you would call them, thingamabobs, that they all had to go up, and men on the other side of the rope, pulling them up at the soundstage to fly around. And at the same time, doing their lines and then landing in a certain place because they had a ship that was sitting there, the prow. I mean, it was incredible. Wow. It really was.
And with you, they actually had a giant pair of scissors that you were interacting with, and you actually were looking through a mocked-up keyhole, right?
Yes, and they made me another one about 2 years ago. I have it in my house. But the scissors were huge, and there was a man that was inside a scaffolding, a 2-story scaffolding. He was on the first floor, and he was supposed to pull against me and against the scissors, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're supposed to be trying to pry open the drawer of the dresser that I got shut up in by Peter. Well, the problem was that the scissors weighed about 2.5 ounces. Mm-hmm. Although they were 16 feet high, they were still made out of balsa wood. And how do you do that?
Right.
So you have to pretend. And so I was pulling on it, and it wasn't really doing well, so we were going to try another way. And the man who was inside this, off camera that I was pulling against, I don't know, he let go of the rope or something, and he came out and went spinning across the floor. I spun across the floor after him. We landed in a heap, laughing because neither one of us was hurt, but it was so funny. Mark Davis got up to come over and help us. He tripped. He ended up in the pile. And we sat laughing and just having the best time. And, of course, the first thing that we said was to the cameraman, we want a copy of that film. And the cameraman said, you did all the action off camera.
Oh, no.
I couldn't get it. So, dumb me, I said, would you like us to do it again?
Wow. That's incredible.
But it was, and you maybe have seen pictures of the keyhole, the big prop, where I'm trying to climb through, and I can't get through. And they made it about 2 inches too high, and if you look down, you'll see I'm standing on my tippy toes. I can hardly reach. But it was, and the scenes that they did building the ship so that the fight scene with Captain Hook and Peter Pan, that is Roland Dupre, were incredible.
Now, I wanted to ask you, of course, we want to talk about a lot of the other stuff that you did during your career as well, but before we move on from talking about Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, did you get a chance to meet and interact with Walt Disney directly? Because I know a lot of times with, the heads of the studios and directors and stuff, you don't necessarily get to meet them, but I wanted to know, did you get a chance to meet and know Walt personally?
When you say to know somebody, I think of it, to sit down and have a cup of coffee, and the answer is no. Mm-hmm. But to meet him and chat with him, the answer is yes. And it was serendipitous, and in my new book that comes out in November, there are pictures of what was going on, because we were on the big sound stage with a big cyc and all the lights and the camera crew. But over on the wall of the sound stage, I would say maybe 30 feet away, there was some risers, And then on the wall, it looked like white paper that had black graphs on. And I'm standing there doing my work, and I look at the big door that was open because we had no recording, so we didn't have to worry about it. And I see shadows of men coming in, silhouettes. But I'm still doing my thing, and I look over, and one of them you couldn't miss. It was Buddy Ebsen. Nobody walks like Buddy Ebsen. and there was this tall, shadow that walks in, and you say, that's got to be Walt Disney, and it was. So they were over working on some project that turned out to be the first work on a thing called The Little Man, which turned into animatronics. So, of course, when all of this, what they were trying to check on and what they were doing, Mr. Disney would look over and see Mark Davis. He was watching, and the cameraman, and Jerry Geronimi, and he'd come over and chit-chat. And, of course, I was part of that chit-chat. It was wonderful.
Wow.
And, of course, I wore a cover-up. I was not going to talk to Walt Disney in a one-piece bathing suit. But I will tell you this. I never called him by name because I didn't know. At that time, I still called Mark Davis Mr. Davis.
Right.
I mean, that's the way you were trained. So what do you say? Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, Mr. Disney. Well, that sounds pretty... Hi, Walt. No,
Right.
that doesn't sound right. Uncle Walt. No, I wasn't young enough to do that. So I never mentioned his name on purpose during our whole conversation. I remember sweating that one out. And he was absolutely charming. Wow. And it was a time when he didn't have a lot of problems, evidently. So he was ready to talk and chit-chat and charming. And I think it was 4 or 5 times he came over. And it was delightful.
Wow.
Well, it's very cool that Mark Davis, who did animation and many of the other, what they call the original old men, did animation.
The 9 old men.
Exactly.
The 9 old men.
He was also responsible for many of the animatronics in Pirates of the Caribbean and the Haunted Mansion, too, right?
Well, he switched over from being an animator over to what we now call Imagineering. Mm-hmm. And so he switched his office and everything because he had these wonderful ideas. And you know what? Walt Disney is no dummy. He's somebody with wonderful ideas. And, of course, his Mark's darling wife who could do things and showed her mettle when she was still sewing costumes on the train on the way back to the New York World's Fair to show it's a small world. I mean, this woman is a genius in her own right. So they worked very closely together, and then she did the clothing, the costumes for Pirates of the Caribbean, which is not easy because you had to be able to take them off and clean them.
Sure.
And so Velcro was, I don't know whether it was there yet or not, but this woman really, and Mark was so proud of her, and she was so proud of him. It was lovely to see them. So he went over to, as somebody told me one time at the studio, he went over to the other side.
Well, it was great. He's proud of his wife. I know your late husband, Jack, was very proud of you because I understand that when he watched Peter Pan, he said to you, I would recognize those thighs anywhere when he saw Tinkerbell.
Yes, he did. He did. He was such a darling. And he was right there with me. And, he decided that he wanted to have his own career when we were married. He was retired. He was an aircraft commander of B-29s in the war, etc. And so he didn't get to do it. A gorgeous man, and he looked like Sean Connery. And he spoke like Sean Connery. I mean, his gorgeous voice. So I showed him what to do, and he was in 64 productions in 3.5 years before his 7th heart attack caught up with him. And the doctor said, I don't think you do anymore. But he worked for, Michael Bay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And he got me to work for Michael Bay. Wow. I mean, he was wonderful. Show business is really, really great, don't you think?
It is. I've got to ask you, because I don't know, how much you remember, because you were so young, but you were in 3 Little Rascals shorts?
I was not in the short. No, it was later on. And no, I back up. Somebody walked outside my door, and there goes my focus. Yes, I was. I remember I was the blur. It's run over here and laugh, and then run over here and shout at people. I remember all of that. I also remember knowing somehow that if I didn't listen to the director, that he could fire me.
Really?
I certainly didn't use the word fire, but that I wouldn't be there any longer. So I learned discipline at the age of 4, 5, and 6. I listened, and I could make $8.50 a day. And that was during the Depression. Incredible.
Wow, that's what they paid you?
Yeah, and I had wonderful parents who adopted me. I found my real family 50 years later, and I found out I was Irish and Scottish, and I knew it. I just knew it. Anyway, so I did that, and then I got sort of used to what was going on in the industry, because nobody would tell us anything. We would bump our noses up against this. If they had a line, it's also in my book, Tinkerbell Talks, Tales of a Pixie Dusted Life. Mm-hmm. I was over at Warner Brothers for my first film that I was ever on a lot, and I didn't know what a lot was. And there's huge sound stages. It was so cold when you were in the shade, and you stood in front of this little door within this huge door, and then this red light went back and forth. And the man who was guiding us, I called him Mr. Plaid Pants. I didn't know his name, but he said, "No, we have to be quiet. We don't want to disturb the shooting." Mm-hmm. You say that to a 4-year-old, and what does that 4-year-old think?
Exactly, and look at the kids in Hollywood now. I mean, they're not as disciplined as you guys were.
So anyway, it stopped ringing, and they took us inside the sound stage. And of course, it was terribly dark, except where they were shooting, way on the other side. And I figured out, because I always have to figure out, put something that makes it logical, that there were monsters at every corner. And that's why it had to be so big. And so that's why they were shooting them. But they lined us all up, and they said, now let's see which kids we want. And you step forward, and had no idea that meant that I was going to be in the movie. None whatsoever. And I was a fairy in the movie Midsummer Night's Dream.
Now, that movie was with Mickey Rooney, too, right?
Yep. That's the one where he broke his leg during the skiing while he was on the movie, and they had to hide him behind bushes and in a wheelchair. And it was a very interesting movie, and most everything was said to us in German.
Really? If you look at that, it's very surreal. I mean, to me, it's scary sometimes. It's cute and it's fancy, but it's kind of creepy looking sometimes in some of the scenes.
Oh, it's a fabulous... Olivia de Havilland was only 15 when she did that part.
Wow.
Played Shakespeare, and you know what? I understood her.
Really?
I mean, Shakespeare is not easy to understand, but she was so wonderful at it.
Wow.
Amazing. And I always thought that the tenor who played the other part, who went on to play detectives, but he was the Gold Diggers of 36, and he started out to be this tenor like Dennis Day, and he played in it, and he did very well. So it's an amazing movie to watch. And I do know that I was there when the fire started on the set, and I had somebody who was writing a book about it call me up and say, what was the fire like? And I told them it was way up high in one of the arc lights, and and stuff was falling down, but it wasn't a big deal. And the lawyers at Warner Brothers wouldn't let him put it in the book.
Really?
They said, yeah, someone might come back and sue.
After all this time, wow. Wow.
Oh, it's a great business to be in.
Now,
it is scary.
I guess one of the Little Rascal shorts you were in was probably what is my favorite, is Aladdin's Lamp. Do you remember that one at all? I mean, is there anything?
Yes, I do. I did that in Culver City for Hal Roach Sr., fabulous man. What a darling man. You always knew that he cared about the kids, And fortunately, we had a fellow named Gordon Douglas, who was assistant dance director, who it turns out was the director on the Eddie Cantor movie that you mentioned earlier, If You Knew Susie. And then we went to, and he went with us to MGM. And I did 2 or 3 at MGM, we don't know which, because I was going to Gladys and Maury Rubin's dance school, and so we're just put down as Maury and Rubin's dance cadets or whatever it's called. So we didn't get credit on it. But the one that you mentioned, Aladdin, and the other one is the one where Alfalfa goes on the radio.
Oh, yeah. I can't think of the name of that. Yeah.
Something singer. I can't remember right now.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I remember that one very well. And it was, most people don't, and I'm probably taking up too much time. I'm sorry, but I just want to point out that most people don't understand that when you're a child actor, and it's not like that much today, I don't think. I don't know, because I'm not a child, and I'm not in the movies. I'm more on television. But what we did was we would go in and sit down in this little closed-in building that was wrapped up in burlap. It was, my guess would be a 12 by 12, and we had tables that were made for adults and chairs that were made for adults, and we were either supposed to color or we were supposed to do our schoolwork, and we had to whisper the whole day. And the teacher whispered to us, and you went back and forth, and those who had main parts would be worrying about, how many monkeys dug the ditch on the way to Boston when the train backed up 4 miles, whatever it was. And then they were called out to do the scene. And as they walked to the set, they had to start remembering what the lines were, what the scene was all about. And the adult actors had been working on it the whole time when they were setting it up. And the biggest thing I think I remember as a child actor, working with Ginger Rogers and with Fred Astaire, and if you like that, is walking over and saying, "Oh, please don't let them. I hope they haven't changed the dialogue." It was, and then you'd go back and you'd whisper again. It was very disorienting. Well, and when Bobby Driscoll, I graduated on the movie If You Knew Susie, so I didn't have to go to school anymore. And Bobby Driscoll was 11 at the time, and he said, could you come and read in there with me? It's awful lonely.
Wow.
And it is lonely. It really was. It was lonely.
I got to find out, because we play a lot of Eddie Cantor on the station here. What kind of a man was he? I mean, you had a big role.
Oh, what a doll. What a doll, baby. He produced If You Knew Susie. And it was interesting to see Joan Davis, who did a great job. I just watched the movie the other night on a fresh print. It was much better than I remembered it. Anyway, she was protective of him. She really, really was. If they were saying that it should be this and not that, she'd say, "Well, Eddie, let's talk about that." And you could just tell that she knew differently. And he was the producer, so he had all of his money tied up in it. But he was so sweet to everybody. And when he changed my name on the last day that I was on the set, I had been known as Miss X. And you know what, they put that together for 6 weeks. And I didn't appreciate that very much. But I went to him the last day and said, "Now, what name is going to show up on the credits?" And he lied to me, sweet man. He said, "Oh, well, I've been thinking deeply about that." And I thought to myself, "Yep, you lie as bad as my dad." Anyway, but it was sweet. I mean, it wasn't. And so he said, "Do you like your first name?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "Margaret." And I had never thought of Margaret as my first name, but it is. And I said, "Yes." And he says, "Well, my favorite actor is Norman Kerry." And I thought, I have no idea who in the world that is. But so he said, "I think your name should be." Well, I told him that my mother's family came from County Kerry, Ireland, which was true. Found out that John Kerry had his name changed to Kerry by his great-grandfather because of County Kerry, Ireland. And somebody else had their name changed. So I said, okay. So then I was Margaret Kerry, and I signed off on that. And as I was leaving that day, and I assume it was a Friday because it was sort of relaxed, and as I'm walking out, Mr. Cantor stopped and he says, wait, like this. And he stood there and looked around, and then he started to sing, if you knew Margaret like I knew Margaret, oh, what a girl. And he had a handkerchief and did his old If You Knew Susie.
Wow.
But he put the name Margaret in it. Now, if that isn't a dear man, I don't know what is.
Absolutely.
You know, you're just like a museum of television and movies. I mean, I wish you were here in person. Well, and you know, a lot of people didn't really make a transition from film to TV, and you certainly did, because you was in a very successful 1950s TV show called The Ruggles.
And I had my own show for 5 years called Teleteen Reporter with Al Burton, who produced Soap and Fernwood Tonight, and was sideman for Norman Lear.
Yeah.
So we did a weekly show on 13, and then it moved to 7, and then I was doing the Ruggles show, and I was doing radio. I loved television.
Yeah, for sure.
I hated film. I just loved television. That's what I tell people when they say, how do I go about breaking into the industry? I said, first of all, find out what you love, because working in film is not the same as working in television. It's not the same as working on the stage. It's not the same as working in musicals.
Right. Well,
you have to find out what you want. I cannot do a stage play. I cannot do the show over and over and over and over again. I lose focus. But let me do an Andy Griffith show or a Charlie Ruggles show. Wow. So I said, first of all, find out your target. What do you want to do? Then learn how to do your acting or whatever you're going to do towards that target.
Right.
You just have to. Now, y'all are on a type of radio.
Well,
so obviously you love it.
You know, I was looking, and I was looking for like episodes of the Ruggles, and I haven't seen any on YouTube except for little bits and pieces. Is there any of those episodes on video? Or
yes, call Eddie Brent, Saturday Matinee. He has some.
Oh, okay.
And UCLA Archives has some. There are about 4 I've never seen. I haven't been out to UCLA to see them. But my gosh, I have to tell you, Jimmy Hawkins, who played my little brother on the show, we met accidentally and we're chatting one day, and I said, I've never seen it. He says, well, I've got copies. So he sent me a copy, and my dears, that was like 15 years ago. And when my darling husband Jack was sitting in the living room, and I put it in, it was tape, and I sat there and I realized I was good. I was really, really good. But you know something, Tiffany and Terry? In TV, nobody ever tells you you're any good. In the film, it's so, you have the director sitting right next to the camera and telling you what he wants and how he wants it. And that's it. That's what we want. And then the cameraman says, we've got it, and so on. So you work towards something. In television, we would be doing our rehearsal, our run-through, and suddenly everything would stop. And we'd stand around and look at each other. No one would tell us if we, the actors, were doing something that they wanted different. And our director could be a whole stage away in a control room. And finally we got to the place where we would ask the floor manager, was it us? Oh, no, it was the camera. We got a problem with the camera. And when you're in a film, the director will say to you, are you ready? Can we do it?
Sure.
Okay, are you ready? You let me know. And then you nod, and then you get ready. On television, on the run-throughs, they don't ask. We were more like, not that I didn't love it, don't misunderstand, but we were more like the camera moves and the boom mic moves, and the machinery.
Right.
More than anything else. So it was, I never knew I was any good. I had no idea that I looked good because we had kinescopes, which I never saw.
Right. You know, back in those days, those early days, you're talking about running through it and being quick about it, and they just did everything in a hurry. When I saw you at the clip joint, didn't you say that at the same time they were shooting on another set right by you, they were shooting Space Patrol, and didn't like...
Yes. Well, not right at the same time, but Space Patrol set was next to us, and then there we were, and then Chef, and I don't want to say Milani because I don't think that was his name. He'd forget, and he'd be walking to his set while we were on the air singing in Italian. It was great fun. It really was. When we got the big show with Tommy Noonan and Peter Marshall, and we did this big extravaganza, it became a little less chaotic. But to start with, it was still KECA when we started off at the Ruggles.
Right.
Wow.
It was not KABC.
Well,
so, and I love it. I love it. But can I just say something, too, about if people want to know when my book will be out, because all of this believe it or not, there's 106 short chapters of stuff. For example, when I ended up snorkeling in the Pacific off of Emerald Bay for a very nervous B movie called Crime Beneath the Sea, because the stunt woman didn't feel up to it. It was too cold.
Oh my!
Wow.
I hate swimming. I hate being in the ocean. You know, stories like that. Or when I worked with George Clinton in Funkadelic, I did produced a 7-minute animation for him in 10 days. Unheard of. And then my boss forgot to get the money from him, and I had to go back and find them.
You know something?
It's just, I've had a romp, and I would say the name of my website is tinkerbelltalks.com. And isn't that appropriate? Because I certainly can. Have you noticed I'm a talker?
Well, you know, you're a radio host, so I expect it. You just told me how cool you are because you work for George Clinton. Now, George Clinton was on the station.
Isn't he something? But I never saw him.
Really?
I saw a man came to our animation company, a little animation company out in, a really small independent. And this little man whose name he told us was I Am Dorky. He told us his name was. Wow. And he said, we're told that you're the only one that could get this out in 10 days because we're doing the mothership and all the other stuff at the Shrine Auditorium, and we need to... I had no idea what they were talking about.
Wow.
But when they explained they already had a comic strip and they had the characters, I thought we could do this because we had a thing that was called Animac. Mm-hmm. You could move and animate by movement, static movement, but movement of a car going by or somebody walking by, or you could go up and down with it. So you didn't animate all that stuff. You only animated small portions of it, like Clutch Cargo. Right. We did that in Space Angel and so on. So I said, well, I'll attempt it. And so I picked it up. Oh, it was wild. We kept the camera department at a place open all night long because I would take wet cells out to the ink and paint department in Glendora. Mm-hmm. Then take the ones that had been ink and painted, they were still wet, put them back in the back of my station wagon, and drive to the camera department and hope that these would be dry. By the time I got there, it was crazy. Wow. Anyway, but fun. It really was.
You know, my producers prompted.
I picked up the film on Friday morning, and I said to my boss, "They owe us $3,000 for this. Don't give it to them because they're a concert, and you can't take a check or anything by law." And so I had to go to CBS. I came back and I said, "Well, did you get the $3,000?" He says, "Well, I Am Dorky didn't have any money."
Wow. I've got so much, Margaret, that I'm trying to get in because you've had this great career. We definitely want to be talking about your book more and your Key Club, too, off your website. But I grew up watching Clutch Cargo. Now, the thing that I've got to ask you this first question. The thing that was great about Clutch Cargo is, okay, now as somebody that's worked in animation, okay, they had great stories, but the animation was really bad. It was kind of like...
it's no worse than anime today.
That's true.
Yes, ma'am.
It
you are
really
right.
Isn't.
I take back
and
what I said.
I used to apologize for it, but we were in syndication.
Yeah.
And we were doing color. We were the only ones who were doing a strip in color. Mm-hmm. In fact, Crusader Rabbit was being made at the same time, and it was black and white.
Yes.
But we couldn't move in on the big boys because they had the Saturday morning news, you know, and the early Sunday morning. So we had to go. Kalispell, Montana was the first station that that gave us a contract. So we were in negative financing completely. We had to pay everything up front. And no episode could be more than $3,600.
Wow. You know.
So if you notice, we had trains that were moving and planes that were moving, but we did that real time. And the biggest cost was animating the lips. Well, look at Animate. They don't animate the lips.
Right. Now, the thing I want to ask you about that is that's what was unique about Clutch Cargo, because the lips were real people's lips, right?
Those were mine. I did all the girls. I did, gee, what do we do now, Clutch? I was Spinner. I was Secret Agent X, which used to break me up because she's standing there with a patch over her eye in black. She has black nail polish. She has a long black dress, and her name is Secret Agent X. And Clutch says, I wonder who the mole is, Skinner.
Wow.
But you realize, of course, maybe not. That changed the whole direction of animation.
Yeah, well, I mean, how did they do that? When they turned around, they hand drew, the scenes and stuff, and then they superimposed the actors' lips over. Was that kind of like they put like a patch of blue screen over?
They projected. There was a special Synchrovox patented way that you could project lips on artwork. And that's how they did it. And you had a white mat that the camera was looking through. You had white nose, chin, that was exactly the same white color. And then they would paint the lips differently for each character. And then they would shoot just certain lines. And then when it came to it, they would project the lips onto the static art.
Wow.
That's incredible.
You know, as I say, but here's something that I'm going to bring to the foreground. It was after Clutch Cargo that we stopped with squashed cats and stepped-on dogs and animals beating each other up. We went to human characters, and it was Clutch Cargo who did that.
Right. Wow.
That was it.
And you know,
that was the turning corner.
I have very vague memories of Space Angel, but I was looking at some clips on YouTube again, and the main character in Space Angel looks vaguely like Clutch Cargo. Am I right?
Oh, come on. He's a hero. Sort of like Clark Kent and Spider-Man, and they all look alike. Yes. And that was Alex Toth, the great artist, the comic strip artist, and the great artist. And that's what he wanted for... You know that patch over his eye? Don't you wish that the Raiders had used that artwork instead of the stupid one that they're using for their football team?
Wow. Am I right in knowing that you got to work with him later on, because he was also in the Andy Griffith Show? Why don't you talk about Andy Griffith? But did you not work with Hal Smith in the animation too? I mean, Hal Smith... He
was a dear, dear friend. I met him on the Ruggles Show.
Wow.
And because they had us do on the Ruggles Show, we never heard of a cue card. And they would choose these certain times for, if it were a big show for us, to give a straight 1-minute commercial for, say, like Dr. Ross dog food. And of course, this is terrible, because first of all, to keep a minute in your mind when you know that you have to do a live show right after that, and you're the principal, and you were trained never to look into the camera. And I don't know whether you know about it, but when you look into the camera, the lens in the camera is a mirror.
Yes.
And you are watching yourself. And you're saying, I don't look so good doing that. Anyway, I came to this part where Dr. Ross dog food, and this was a time when women had no weight. Females had no weight whatsoever. Only men could tell you what to use and what to do and how to do it. And so the last part of the commercial that I had was supposed to go, my dad thinks Dr. Ross dog food is best for our dog. My brother thinks Dr. Ross dog food is best for our dog, and so do I. Now, what came out was, my dad likes Dr. Ross dog food, my brother likes Dr. Ross dog food, and so do I, and I licked my lips. And so they got Hal Smith to do the announcing from then on. And he was one of our closest friends.
Wow.
And then he came in and did 8 voices, and I do another 8 voices, all on the, you know that this was not a union shop. But I had great fun doing it, and he was so wonderful.
Well, he was not only Otis the drunk on the Andy Griffith Show, but he also did the voice of the dog on Davy and Goliath.
Which I watched when I was growing up.
Well, he was incredible.
Yeah, and we switched back with Paddlefoot.
Oh, okay. Well, what was
and if he had too many characters, I do Paddlefoot, vice versa. I did a dolphin on that show. And he did a camel that was hysterically funny.
Wow.
He did an elephant too, and he could do that one, you know, where you put the teeth to your lips.
Oh yeah.
But may I say something here?
Sure.
I have a clubhouse. Have you heard of subscription websites?
I have, yeah. Especially lately, it's becoming kind of like the mainstream, and there's something called Margaret Kerry's Key Club.
I found that I could not keep doing. Putting all these things on DVDs and editing them and putting new stuff up, and so I just couldn't afford it.
Right.
And so along comes this thing that's called Subscribers Website, and so I have Margaret Tinkerbell Kerry's Clubhouse, and I have things like Virginia Davis's. You know, she was Alice when she was 4 years old for Walt Disney. I have a wonderful interview, which we have going on there. We have about 55 clips on it, and it costs people all of $3.99 a month. I mean, that breaks the budget, I know. But it pays for my editor, and it pays for carrying, because you have to get something where you keep all this stuff.
Right.
This cloud thing, or whatever it's called. I don't know, understand any of it. But I mean, it was easing up to about $6,000-7,000 just to keep this stuff going, and I wanted people to see it. And then the Lone Ranger, I have that clip, and I have where I get to say, I'm the one who says, "Yes, Dad, he's the Lone Ranger." The highlight of my career. I could be very shallow, you know.
You want to know something? I want you to talk more about your book in the Key Club. But I am so in awe of you, because my hero is the Lone Ranger, and
he's my hero too.
Did you work? Was it with Clayton Moore, or was it with John Hart?
Clayton Moore.
All right, the best one.
Quick story about the Lone Ranger. I was doing it was down and dirty getting the Lone Ranger shows done, because they had to turn out one a week. And we had everything interiors that we possibly could do, and the horses were there. And this was the time when there were no women on the crew. People forget that. There was but nothing but men, and I was darn cute. I will tell you.
No, you were.
And so here we were, this closed set. There was, I think that the wardrobe lady was there for about 2 hours, then she left. And I was there all the rest of the day. And any time that we had to stop and break down the camera and move to something else, Clayton Moore and Jay Silverheels would call me over to where they were sitting, and we would chat. And these two men protected me from all these galoops, you know, that were 4-letter words.
Right.
Everything else.
Wow.
They were rough and ready guys.
Right.
They were not union at the time. So it was who you could get who knew anything about it. But they did that for 4 days.
Wow. And this was all.
I just thought they were absolutely wonderful.
So they really were real-life heroes.
They were. This was all at the Gene Autry Melody Ranch that they filmed that, right?
No, we were down in the. I think it was. I can't be sure, but I think it was General Services over in Hollywood.
Okay.
One of the little sound stages. I could be wrong. It could have been down near Culver City.
Yeah. I got to ask you one more thing.
Everything was interior in a sound stage.
Okay. I got to ask you one more thing, and then we want to have you promote all your stuff. And that is, okay, to work in classic comedy, okay, you did your thing with the Little Rascals, and you got to work with the last incarnation of the Three Stooges, which was Moe, Larry, and Curly Joe. And
I did.
I got to know about being...
I'm all right. I have recovered.
So you didn't, get your eyes poked out or anything? I mean...
Well, they were calmed down by then, and they knew that this was for little kids.
Okay.
So, I mean, these were three smart guys, but they had two really smart women with them. And that was Mrs. Howard and Mrs. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
And although just by sign language, they could tell that they were uncomfortable or whatever it was great fun. The men were dear. They didn't know quite what to do with me. But then, this is strange, because in show business, by the time that they were growing up, almost every female that they came to was like a Marilyn Monroe.
Mm-hmm.
With the sex and the flirting and all the rest. And they didn't want that.
Right.
And I didn't know how to do that. So it worked out very well. But one of my favorite stories is with Larry Fine had a speech impediment,
Mm-hmm.
and he never heard that he had a speech impediment.
Okay.
I'm overdoing it so that you can hear it on the radio.
Right.
So he had a line that was, "Oh, Moe, look over there. I think our ship is sailing in." And Moe Howard says, "Cut. Larry, we can't understand a word you're saying." "Oh, I'm sorry, Moe. I'll try again." So, all right, roll him, okay, up to speed. And he says, "Oh, Moe, look over there. Our ship is sailing in. Was that better?"
I wanted to ask you, because they had their big career at Columbia Studios making all the shorts. They made some features too, and they were sadly kind of dumped by Columbia, and they didn't do anything for a long time. And then they were found, according to this biopic, by somebody that was a fan, and he got them into all this kids stuff, and they put out records, and they did the kids shows that you were in. Were they satisfied with what they were doing and doing the kids stuff, or did they kind of miss the old days?
I think that those men were so professional that they would like anything that they were doing right then. They were like, "You want to see me in front of the camera? That's like I am. You want me to go make a speech? Oh boy, I'll be right there.
Right.
You're not going to pay me? Okay. Just as long as I can get in front of a public." That's a performer for you.
Right.
Yeah.
It really, really is. Everything in us says, go perform. If you make money doing it, somebody else has to figure out how that happens. But if you have an actor who is not a performer, who is called to do something that is rather low life to them, I would think that they would have problems with it.
Right.
I know one who did. I read about him, and that was Alan Ladd.
Really?
The last movie he made.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was wonderful in it, but it was a supporting role. And he couldn't do that. And he never liked acting that much, strangely enough.
Well,
that's what I read.
One thing about the Three Stooges, and we were telling everybody, we went and visited Larry at the mausoleum where he's interred in the crypt. There was lipstick prints all over the front, because obviously the women loved Larry. I don't know. Maybe he was a ladies' man. Who knows? But, wow.
I doubt it. There's something about him that was very little boy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very endearing.
Another story. We were down at the beach at Balboa Bay Club shooting some of the live scenes, and we had tricycles, grown-up tricycles, but they were quite small, and with big balloon tires that are supposed to go in the sand, right?
Right.
And I said tricycles. I meant two-wheelers. This is two-wheelers.
Uh-huh.
And so Mo takes a look at this two-wheeler sitting there, and he goes and throws his leg over it, and he says, how do you start it? He starts it, and then stands it up straight, and the kickstand up, right?
Right.
So Curly comes over, and he takes a look at it, he says, oh, and he throws his leg over it, and he figures out how to start it, and he stands it up straight, and the kickstand goes up. Larry comes over, gets on it, and does the kickstand, and the whole thing falls over. And it was like, what happened? What happened? You know? But that's what he would do. He was like a little kid.
Right.
I think you could turn him loose on America's Funniest Home Videos. He could turn in something, but he was just lovable.
Yeah. Well, Margaret...
Curly Joe had a chip on his shoulder every once in a while.
I had a feeling.
Mo could handle him like it was so smooth unless you knew what was going on. It was like nothing. Everything was fine.
Right.
Well, I can imagine why he had a chip on his shoulder, though, because rather than being able to be his own person, he was there because he kind of looked like the original Curly.
Yeah.
But you see, I didn't know any of that. We didn't have a internet where you could go check this, check that, check the other. I mean, the big dance number that I did in If You Knew Susie was choreographed by Nick Castle, not by Charlie O'Curran, because he couldn't do tap dancing. He got all the other dances in it for Eddie Cantor and Joan Davis. But mine and Dick Humphreys, he got his friend Nick Castle do it. Well, I was taking lessons from Nick Castle. Oh, big deal. I go back to write about him for the book, and it turns out he's one of the greatest choreographers the screen has ever known.
There you go.
And I went, say what? I didn't know that.
The Internet's full of rumors, too. The Internet's saying that you were associated with this one old-time radio show, and it's not true. It's not you.
The Merton Marge.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Merton Marge.
Right, and it's not you at all.
Yeah. Well, what happened there was... they were going at the Hal Roach studio. I don't know who. It was just at the studio. We're going to do Merton Marge. And I got called in to be one of the, for the pilot, to be one of the characters in it. Well, I knew Merton Marge from the radio because other people listened to it. I didn't. But I knew sort of what it was. Well, it was just a mess. Just a mess. And so we never even finished it, as far as I know. And so I never thought about my name being on it, but somebody put it up.
Wow. Was there any...
very interesting. Here's another one. On the Clutch Cargo, there was somebody in our company who had it in for Dick Brown. And if you go to the internet about Clutch Cargo, you will not find one word about Dick Brown, who produced the whole thing, wrote the stories, sold it. Not one word about Dick Brown.
That's sad. Did you do
it? I've got to get somebody to help me to change it.
Absolutely. And you can do that, too. In fact, I can even help you do that. I can show you how you can do that.
I would love it because I can't do it. I mean, I know where you turn off a computer where it says start. Right. That's about it.
All right.
I've never understood that one.
Did you do any other old-time radio at all? I wanted to ask you real quick.
No, my radio was mostly at KKLA, Christian Talk Radio at Salem. And I interviewed the people that I wanted to interview.
Right.
And so I got pretty good. I interviewed, I have a tape of interviewing Lucille Bliss. You remember her? She did the voice of Smurfette.
Oh, really? Okay, yes. Wow.
Yeah,
okay, that's cool.
And she did Crusader Rabbit at the same time that I was doing Clutch Cargo.
You know, for me...
Et cetera, et cetera.
For me...
So that's the kind of thing that I did.
Right. My favorite cartoon heroes was Clutch Cargo and Crusader Rabbit, because I was a member of the Crusader Rabbit Club, and I was very proud of that. But we want to end this... We want to end this by letting people know, okay, now you've got this great website. Now, what is the URL of your website? Is tinkerbelltalks.com?
Okay, it's tinkerbelltalks.com, which I think is really easy to remember. And it's not called a key club anymore. A dear man of 11 years who was a Disneyite has used that phrase, and we stepped on his toes. Yeah. So we changed it to Clubhouse, 2 words. Margaret Tinkerbell Kerry's Clubhouse. and you can sign up for $3.99 a month, or $19.95 for 6 months, but it's actually you get a month free.
Right.
And we have 55 clips up, interviews, old clips of mine, surprises, comedy. We did one that's called The Pawn Store, where I am, as Georgette, I am pawning an antique can of soup, which is pretty darn funny. And then yesterday we did a new one because we're working to fly. I'll be flying up to Mount Airy next week to do the Mayberry Days up in North Carolina, where our little town of Mount Airy turns into Mayberry. About 10,000 people come. Mm-hmm. And George Lindsay was Goober, if you remember.
Absolutely.
And he passed away. Well, George Lindsay Jr. comes up there, and he does Goober. Okay. I mean, it's hysterical. So I just did an interview with him for this Margaret Tinkerbell Kerry's Clubhouse. And what you do is we give you a password, and you can be entertained. We will be throwing up more videos week after next. So we have 55 now that are, some of them are pretty funny. I also have a reading from the James M. Barrie book. I also have a reading from the third act that James M. Barrie wrote in 1908. And that was 4 years after he originally wrote the two-act play. And hardly anybody has ever heard that. It's When Wendy Grows Up.
Fantastic.
And so things like that. It's
definitely
and
cool.
Your book, is that out now?
That'll be out in November.
Okay.
And they can also get that over at the website, right?
I'm sorry, dear?
They can also get that over at the website, tinkerbelltalks.com.
All that stuff. And then, because I'm flitting here and there, I'm going to Oakhurst next week. And Oakhurst is the portal to Yosemite on the south end, away from the fire. And I go up and I help raise funds for a scholarship up there. I signed Tinkerbell ornaments, and then for the Hallmark store up there. And then I do a thing called Disney Days, where again we raise scholarship funds. Then I'm coming back, then going up to Mount Airy, then coming back, and then I go to Rhode Island, I think.
Wow.
Well, you are a busy woman, and we encourage. I actually saw all those dates, and I want to remind all of our listeners that if you want to get a chance to meet Margaret, head over to tinkerbelltalks.com. There's an area that gives the dates and the locations of all the appearances that are coming up, and make sure to check out Margaret Tinkerbell Kerry's Clubhouse. And may I say thank you for that? Isn't it a lovely website? It is.
I can say that because a fan came out of the woods and said, I want to build you a website. And Michael Aronson has been overlooking. He's a Disney man from the word go, and I think he's done such a beautiful and charming job.
Yes, he has.
It's very Tinkerbell fairy-like. Yes. It has all that pixie dust and magic all over it.
Oh, Margaret, I want to thank you so much for joining us on the air, and keep in touch. You have my phone number. We would love to have you come back on because we just touched the tip of the iceberg tonight.
Oh, my goodness, I'm delighted, and just everybody. By the way, if you scroll down to the bottom of the home page, I do believe, and you click there are 3 chapters from my book that you might like to read.
That's fabulous.
Perfect.
You know, get going.
Yeah, get going on it.
All right, well, thank you.
And so, as we're leaving, I want to be able to say it takes faith, and it takes trust, and it takes just a whole lot of pixie dust. God bless you all.
Oh, God bless you too, Margaret. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend.
And thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Bye.